In the grim dark of the 41st millennia, there is only war. Now, Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 takes place hundreds of years after the events of the first game, during the 13th Black Crusade that results in the destruction of Cadia. And that's what it really focuses on, the after effects of the fall of Cadia. And characters like Admiral Spire from the original game return as they try and fight for the Imperium to try and fend off this crusade. It's a very faithful adaptation of the 40k lore. As someone who did appreciate and love Warhammer 40k back in the day as a tabletop game, I can really appreciate how much effort they've put into making this game feel authentic to the lore. There's 3 different separate campaigns you can play, whether you want to be Imperium, Tyranid, or Necron. They're all pretty well done for the most part, though the Imperium one does feel a little bit more in depth than the others, and it feels a little bit more connected to the overall story, especially after the prologue that kind of establishes the fall of Cadia, but they're all still pretty fun and well done. The actual gameplay is sort of like a light version of Total War's campaign mode, so basically when you play one particular faction, you're given command of a army or like a fleet that you can move around to capture different systems. Capturing systems gets you different resources or bonuses, like making ships cheaper or access to higher tier ships or giving you more points to spend or more research things to upgrade stuff during this different tech tree where you can unlock different benefits for your ships. It's a pretty interesting system, though I do wish it was a little bit more in depth in some areas. It's a little bit lacking in the fact that it doesn't feel like there's much options in terms of improvements. You basically get to just upgrade a system between levels 1, 2, and 3, and it doesn't really feel like you're gaining much or making that much of an interesting decision. I mostly just found that the most important thing was simply to try and get as many possible income sources as you could and just upgrade that so that you could just flood ships out to defend things. And then the actual story is basically told through different story missions that you'll find. There's different things, opportunities that'll come up so you can just go around conquering planets, but you're basically given a timer where after you wait a certain amount of time, the crusade becomes more powerful and then enemies will begin attacking more heavily. So you have to constantly be trying to make it to these story missions and then complete them while also fending off the hordes that are attacking your different systems to keep control. Playing as Imperium, for example, you get the choice between buying Adeptus Mechanicus, Imperial Navy, or Adeptus Astartes, or Space Marines, fleets that you can then go around and fight with. It's a pretty cool system that gives you a lot of diverse options because you can choose different heroes that you want to lead them with different benefits and special abilities and powers. The actual battles themselves take place in a real-time strategy so that you basically command the fleets. You'll get a handful of ships and then you can go out and battle. In campaign, you can get new ships that can come in if old ships are destroyed, and you might even have hero units like, for example, Admiral Spire, who cannot die, that you have to control and keep alive, so you can also jump ships away to try and retreat them if needed. The actual battles themselves are pretty interesting, and I found that it was a lot of interesting tactical decisions that you can make. Ships turn very slowly and have different abilities, like Eldar can turn very fast and also move very fast. They're agile, but they're also very weak. Whereas Imperial ships can use burning thrusters to try and turn, while Orcs just have a big-ass thruster and can't really turn very well. There's all sorts of different interesting abilities, like Tyranids can, for example, jump around by sort of lunging themselves forward every so often. Necron ships can teleport. These interesting, distinct differences make playing each faction feel different and also give you a lot of different interesting tactical choices because some races are better at close range while some races are better at far away. Like Adeptus Astartes or Space Marines are really good in close range, while Orcs are also pretty good in close range, while a race like Eldar wants to stay far away and try and pummel you from the distance. And this leads me to the multiplayer, which is where I spent most of my time and where I really enjoyed this game. They have a pretty decently complete set of options. You've got 1v1, 2v2, ranked, or just modes to play against a friend. It's a little bit clunky, the interface, though. I wish it was a little bit better. There's not like a lobby system, so you kind of just always have a queue or invite a friend together. It's just a little bit weird how it kind of works, and it's just kind of clunky. One of the other things I really dislike as well is that 2v2 has a different point size than 1v1. Perhaps this was done for performance reasons, but it's just kind of dumb because 2v2 has half the points for each player, so you can only bring half the amount of ships, which just kind of makes some factions, like for example Necrons, who have super expensive big ships, really difficult to play and really difficult to use in 2v2 because you just have like 1 or 2 ships on at that point because they're so expensive. Or even Tyranids are pretty similar to that. It makes playing some races just kind of frustrating and kind of makes the mode feel a little bit disappointing. I do hope at some point they'll change this and turn it into a more regular mode, so it plays like 1v1 where you can bring a full fleet size for each player. There's a ranked mode system, which is really nice though. As I've kind of mentioned before, I do like competitive gaming, so this was a lot of fun to have a mode where I could try and improve myself by getting higher ranks. It is a little bit goofy though how it kind of ranks matches depending on who wins or loses. Actual victory in the game is determined by one of two things. You either destroy all the enemy ships or you control all the points. This is one thing I really dislike though, is that the map does not have a symmetrical system for the ranked multiplayer. You basically play on these random maps that they've created, and it's kind of frustrating because sometimes the points will be closer to your enemy or there'll be different terrain objects, and it just doesn't feel like it's very symmetrical at all. If all of there was say 2 points on your side, 2 points on their side, 1 in the middle, or 1 point on each side and then 3 in the middle, this would make a lot more sense if it was more symmetrical and balanced. But as a result, it just kind of makes this frustrating experience where sometimes the points are just kind of spread out and they're closer to your opponent or clustered together. That makes it more powerful for factions that just kind of ball together, and it kind of leads to a frustrating and unsatisfying experience. The balance is unfortunately not the greatest either. Some of the factions are just way better than others, like Eldar in particular have ridiculous range and the ability to just pummel you from forever while being cloaked forever. It creates a really frustrating experience because basically the entire game comes around to you just pinging constantly scan with your escort ships, but if they die, you're just completely screwed. It's just unsatisfying and not fun to play because you can never catch them, and it's just kind of a goofy, weird design where they're just so speedy, so agile, and so powerful, but also so weak when they come up to close range. It just creates a really frustrating experience at times. Now, there is a ton of different factions in this game, which is a huge selling point. You've got everything from the Necrons, the Tau, 2 types of Tau, by the way, regular merchant fleet and protector fleet. You've got 3 different types of Eldar, whether you want Craft World, Corsairs, Dark Eldar, Tyranids, Necrons, Orcs, Imperial Navy, Adeptus Astartes Space Marines, or Adeptus Mechanicus, or even Chaos. There's just so many options, and they all play distinctly different. Like Chaos is really good at long range, Space Marines are really close range, Imperial Navy is kind of in the middle, Adeptus Mechanicus has a lot of reliance on Nova cannons, Eldar is very speedy and can warp around the place really fast and can turn fast and use long range. Tyranids can jump on you and pounce on you and pull ships away and cast all these weird abilities. Necrons have all these interesting abilities they can use and can teleport around and also have really beefy, bulky ships. There's just all these interesting, distinct differences that make each faction so much fun to play. And I was really enjoying just experimenting with and playing different factions and just having a blast playing this game online. There's a pretty lengthy progression system for each faction. Basically, as you win matches, you'll gain experience, which unlocks new abilities that you can carry into battle, like different things that'll boost shields or boost range or boost health or give you abilities that can do damage or slow enemies down. These are interesting ideas, and I love how there's so many different ways you can mix and match and play different factions by customizing your flagship and adding different bonuses to your fleet, but it can lead to a really unsatisfying and frustrating experience. Some factions are just infinitely better when they've unlocked their late game tech compared to others which get pretty decent benefits off the bat. From a graphics and sound perspective, the game does a pretty decent job. The weapons sound pretty impactful and interesting to listen to. I like the battle music, especially that plays in the background of this game. It's really nice. And the graphics are pretty decent. All the ships look beautifully animated and pretty detailed. It also captures that really dark, mysterious look of the 40k universe really well. Overall, I like this game a lot. Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 is a great game that really captures the 40k universe, but it does have some problems. The game crashed on me a few times, and it has some problems like the progression system. The campaign mode feels like it could use more time and more development, more interesting options to make. And for some reason, some of the abilities are missing hotkeys, which is really strange. Some of the ships have them for all of the abilities, and some don't, and some abilities are missing them. It's just odd. But despite that, I really enjoy this game, especially in the multiplayer. There's just so many interesting factions and ships to use and different abilities. You can just customize and create your own interesting ways to play, and I love that. And it feels really rewarding when you win battles. They're very fun to use, and there's a lot of interesting micro and decisions that can be made. And so, Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2 gets a 7 out of 10. It's a pretty darn good game that just falls short in a couple areas like performance and overall the fact that it seems to lack some polish in some areas, and I wish that there wasn't this progression system. And I would highly recommend this game to fans of 40k or fans of really strategy games in general.